Okay, let's get right into it. A massive policy shift is literally sending shockwaves through the global luxury market right now. We are talking about brand new US tariffs on diamonds and gemstones. If you follow international trade, or honestly, even if you're just planning on buying some fine jewelry anytime soon, your wallet might be about to feel this. This move has massive, immediate implications for exactly where and how precious stones are sourced, cut, and sold all over the world. So, the core question we're unpacking in this explainer is simple, but it is massive. How exactly are new US labor rules shaking up the global diamond trade? Because make no mistake, changes to international trade policy of this magnitude, well, they don't just happen in a vacuum. These new regulations are essentially rewriting the rulebook overnight. They're instantly crowning clear winners while heavily penalizing others right across the global gemstone trade network.
Okay, let's dive into this. The United States Trade Representative, you know them as the USTR, just wrapped up a sweeping investigation. The result? These massive new tariffs that basically act like yellow caution tape, blocking off the gemstone and jewelry sectors of 60 different trading partners. Think about that for a second. That is a huge portion of the global market suddenly facing some very new, very expensive barriers to entry.
But before we start crunching the numbers, we really have to look at the USTR's primary goal here. These tariffs were rolled out under the official banner of combating forced labor in global supply chains. So fundamentally, at its core, this is about human rights. The USTR is essentially using these tariffs as a blunt economic lever to force global compliance with labor standards, long before we even start talking about the actual money.
The way they're doing this is by creating a tiered system based on a country's evaluated compliance level. So for a lot of the trading partners caught up in this net, they're getting hit with a base 10% import tariff on their gemstones and jewelry. Now, in the high-stakes, super tight margin world of luxury goods, a sudden 10% price hike is absolutely monumental.
But wait, it gets steeper. For nations deemed even less compliant, the US doesn't just stop at 10%, they get bumped up into a highly punitive 12.5% tier. When you're dealing with incredibly high-value commodities like diamonds, well, that extra 2.5% is a massive financial hurdle to clear. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark dividing lines across those 60 countries. On one side, we have the clear winners, the ones who are totally exempt with a 0% tariff on loose-colored precious and semi-precious gemstones, natural pearls, and diamonds. This lucky group includes the European Union, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Taiwan. Then, right in the middle, sits the 10% tier, which most notably traps India. And finally, absorbing the absolute heaviest hit at 12.5%, we have China, Hong Kong, Australia, Colombia, and Thailand. Zooming in on that highest penalty bracket really quickly, we see Australia, Colombia, and Thailand facing this heavy levy. But the situation for Hong Kong and China is absolutely crucial to note here. Goods coming from these two massive hubs aren't just facing this new 12.5% tax. No, they're getting hit with it on top of previously existing Section 301 trade duties. You remember those? The tariffs put in place during previous trade wars? So it's a compounding financial blow that practically suffocates their competitiveness in the US market. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the strategic disadvantage this creates. Look at it. India now bears a 10% tariff burden, but the European Union, they get to retain complete 0% duty-free access. And why does this matter so much? Well, because Antwerp, located right there in the EU, is the world's undisputed leading diamond trading hub. So India, which is this massive powerhouse in diamond cutting and polishing, is suddenly at a severe disadvantage against its absolute biggest rival. And you better believe industry leaders in India are feeling that friction immediately. Kirat Pansali, the chairman of India's Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council, hit the nail on the head. He put it bluntly, saying, imposing a 10% US tariff is not at all justified and remains a challenge for India's gem and jewelry exports. I think that perfectly captures the real-world operational stress this policy is causing abroad, especially while competing centers are just sitting there enjoying duty-free access. So what is the path forward for India? While being in that 10% band gives them a very slight edge over places like Hong Kong for finished jewelry, let's be real, it's cold comfort. Their main priority right now is actively working to secure a bilateral trade agreement with the US. They are fighting desperately for a tariff exemption on natural diamonds and colored gemstones. Basically, to compete with Antwerp, they absolutely have to win back that duty-free access for loose stones. And hey, the pushback isn't just happening overseas, it is happening right here domestically too.
The American Gem Trade Association, alongside several members of Congress, has been actively urging the administration to rethink this whole shebang. They're heavily lobbying to exempt loose, precious, and semi-precious stones from these tariffs entirely. Their argument? The U.S. domestic market relies way too heavily on sourcing from countries like India, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Colombia to just suddenly cut the most with a massive tax.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we really have to ask ourselves. Looking at the sweeping landscape we've just covered, will these tariffs genuinely curb forced labor in the global supply chain exactly as the USTR intends? Or are they simply going to rearrange the global map, push trade through those exempt hubs, and ultimately just raise the price of luxury goods for everyday consumers? It's an incredibly complex dynamic, and the real-world consequences are only just beginning to unfold. Thanks for joining us on this explainer. We'll see you next time.